to welcome you to the pre-stream for my Photography Masterclass. I do these Photography Masterclasses usually every Friday when we don't have the day off, and unfortunately for the next 2 weeks after this, we will have the day off. And actually today is going to be cut short by 30 minutes because we're doing a special video daily creative challenge. So that will preempt my last 30 minutes. Jason Levine will be on doing his thing, but I've got you here now for the first couple minutes to do what I usually like to do, which is show a quick tip or two. Now, today's topic is going to be creating panoramas, HDR, which stands for high dynamic range images, and 360-degree editing in Photoshop. So if you have a camera that can shoot 360 degrees or a drone that can capture 360-degree panoramas, I'm going to talk to you about how to edit those images as well. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive into my quick tip. I'm going to switch back over to my desktop. And with my desktop up, you see I've got some images here that we're going to be looking at a little bit later. But the tip that I want to show you is this is not a mistake. That where you see my finger and this last one where you see my two fingers, that was done on purpose, because usually when you're out and about and you're shooting a bunch of images that you plan to stitch together or merge together later, if you don't have anything that separates them visually, it may be hard to remember, well, were these for HDR, were these for panorama, or these are just a couple different exposures, like what's going on? So I've learned a trick that, I just put my finger in front of the lens after I focus, take one shot with one finger, and then take one shot at the end of that section of images with two fingers to let me know that that's the end. So I know everything in between is something that I intended to do. In this case, it would be something like merging these together as an HDR. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to right click on these three images in Lightroom Classic here, and I'm going to go to Photo Merge. I'm going to merge HDR. You can also just do a Control H if you want to bypass the dialog box. That's another quick tip. So when I do the merge HDR, it will create a preview of, you do know that church, Ener, that's right, we were in that church together. So when we merge the HDR together, it will also apply by default auto align. So align the images, because I did shoot these handheld, I believe. I don't think I had a tripod, I can't remember. Maybe I did have a tripod, I know Victoria did. Auto settings will also be applied, and then you can go ahead and click merge. And then that will merge those images together and create a brand new raw file from those images. So that's the other advantage, is that you get a nice high resolution merged image together that you can edit. And again, keeping in mind that it's going to create that fourth image, which it's doing right now. There it is. And it will also name it in a way so that you know it's the HDR. As soon as the names pop back in here, it should put HDR on the end of the name here, so we know that that's the HDR image. Then you're now free to do whatever you want to do with that image. You can go in and start color correcting, editing, retouching, doing whatever you want to do to it. So that is my quick tip. Stay tuned for more. We'll be back in less than a minute to kick off the main stream, but I just wanted to give you that pre-stream tip as I like to do on my own channels. Cheers, everybody. We'll be back in just a minute. All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to my Photography Masterclass. My name is Terry White, Worldwide Design and Photography Evangelist here at Adobe, and it's my favorite day of the week, Friday, for a few reasons. It's Friday, that's one good reason. And two, that it is the day we like to do our masterclasses. So this is also Masterclass Friday. Let me refresh this window so I can actually see the comments that may be coming in. Make sure we can get that chat going. There we go. I can now see Julie, Tracy, Steve, Rudolph, Andreas, Roger, Tim, let's see, Michael, a name I can't pronounce, so I'm not going to try because I'm bad at pronouncing names. General Kenobi's here, Victoria's here. Welcome, everyone. All right, so with that said, the other thing two things for housekeeping. So number one, if you are watching this on another platform, such as YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you happen to be watching this, I'm only going to be paying attention to the one chat for this one. So this is going to be at b.net/Adobe Live. While you're welcome to hang out and watch it on the channel you're normally watching it on, that's fine. But if you want me to see your comments like RB just said, hello Terry and gang, and Pamela just said good morning, first time on Behance, welcome Pamela. If you want me to give you a shout out, if you want me to see your name, head over to b.net/Adobe Live. So that's the first bit of housekeeping. Second bit of housekeeping is that today is going to be a short day for this stream. Normally I do these for an hour, or let's say technically 55 to 56 minutes. Today it's going to be effectively 25 to 26 minutes because of the special video daily creative challenge that is going on this week. So the one and only Jason Levine will follow me in about 28 minutes to do his daily creative challenge for video. So with that said, I'm not going to spend any more time talking. I'm just going to go ahead and get into my demos because I only have a half hour or less than a half hour to show what I want to normally show. All right, so with that said, let me pop over to my desktop. Today we're going to be taking a look at 3 things. Let me get into my actual right area here. Let me go ahead and turn these up and let's go ahead and get into the right collection. So first and foremost, I'm starting out in Lightroom Classic. You can just as easily do what I'm going to be showing you in Lightroom as well. So if I pop over to Lightroom, you can see that, and you can see the same kinds of images. Let me go to the same folder, which was, I think I'm going to start with Panos. Panos, didn't I have the panel album here? I mean, I have that panel album shared. Oh, that could be. All right, let's go ahead and share that. Oh, I do have the HDR one. Okay, let's go ahead and click on the HDR one. All right, so you see the same images that I've synced from Lightroom Classic or Lightroom. And again, it doesn't matter which one of the Lightrooms you're using. They both work the same way in this respect. So I'm going to be doing this in Classic, but like I said, if you're a Lightroom user, you're not using Lightroom Classic, you would just do the same steps. All right, so let's pop back over to Lightroom Classic, and we're going to actually start off with panoramas. And I do need to share that collection. Let's go ahead and share that one. All right, so let's go to panoramas. And typically with a panorama, it means that you've taken your camera and like the scene you're trying to capture is so massive, so wide that clicking one shot won't do it. You don't have a wide enough lens, or the wide lens is going to maybe add some distortion, and you're too close to it to get a wide angle shot. So you go click, turn a little, click, turn a little, and overlapping. So there's a little bit of overlap between the images. Click, click, click until you've captured the whole scene. Now, first thing I can tell you is it doesn't have to be landscape, meaning it doesn't have to be wide. I'm going to show you an example in a few minutes where it's vertical. So you can go click, click, click for something that's very tall that you don't necessarily have the right lens or the right capability. And of course, if you're using a smartphone, most cameras now, especially smartphones, have a pano feature built in where you just press and hold or press and pan, and it will stitch together a panorama for you. The difference here is that I'm shooting these with in this case, these were with a DSLR or with a mirrorless camera. You're going to get a much higher resolution because you're stitching each one of those high resolution RAW files or high resolution JPEG files into one gigantic panorama. So if you're looking to make a big wall print or a big mural, while your smartphone can certainly capture a panorama, you're probably going to get a much higher resolution panorama shooting with your regular cameras. All right, so I'm going to go down to this set of images that I shot in Iceland. This was my first trip back in 2016, where I've got 4 images that, again, I was just going click, 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 click. And these were technically shot with an iPhone, but they were shot with an attachment on the iPhone from DxO. So I was using the little DxO 24 megapixel camera that shoots in RAW back then, attached to the lightning port of my iPhone back then. But anyway, so if we look at these images, first one, second one, third one, or they may not be in order anymore. Let me go back and look at the order because I didn't look like it was right. Let me look at the names. 8, 9, 10. Yeah, they're in order. 8, 9, 10, 11. All right, so what I want to do now is I want to select all 4 of these. And then I'm just going to right click. And again, whether you're doing this in Lightroom or Lightroom Classic, the steps would be the same. I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose Photo Merge. And I'm going to choose Panorama because these are, you have choices of HDR, which we're going to get into, Panorama, and HDR Panorama. We're going to get into that too. So we're going to start with Panorama, just taking multiple images. And you may get this option. Selected images appear to be HDR exposed brackets. You want to merge to HDR Panorama instead? No, because they're not. So sometimes it guesses wrong. So I'm going to say, no, don't do that. Just make a regular Panorama. And you'll get this, and even though the preview looks like it's a different color, don't pay attention to that. It will be the right color when it's done. Now, because I was hand-holding an iPhone on a windy day in Iceland, you can see you're going to have a lot of this little white gap here around your images because it's not perfectly straight. It did the best it could to merge those images together. But you've got a couple of options now. In Lightroom, you got the option to auto crop. Just say, hey, don't worry about that white space, crop it down to, the real image. And the problem with that though, and this has always bugged me over the years, is that you're giving up quite a bit of image space that could have been used. Like all that white space is pixels that don't have anything, but it would have been nice if it could fill all that in and use it. Well, there are a couple ways to do that. If you're doing it in Lightroom, there's now a new way to do that. And if you're doing it in Photoshop, there's a way to do it with content-aware fill. All right, so just making sure. Confusing for new users. I bet someone think Lightroom C since Lightroom Cloud. Yeah, Jan, I know. I felt the same way at first with Lightroom C being it is Lightroom Classic, but people will think Lightroom Cloud. But we don't have a product called Lightroom Cloud, so there it is. We have a product called Lightroom and Lightroom Classic. But I hear you. All right, so anyway, I'm not going to do an auto crop because I don't want to lose that extra image space. Instead, I'm going to use this option. You have 2 options. You can either say fill edges, where Lightroom will try and guess what those pixels should look like, or boundary warp. So boundary warp was first, then actually auto crop was first, then boundary warp, then fill edges. So if I do boundary warp, it does this. It kind of, and here, I don't know why this is a slider, by the way. I don't know who would ever stop in the middle. Like, I only want some of it filled. Like this should just be an on-off, but it's more dramatic when you slowly slide the slider over and it slowly starts to fill it in. But yeah, I don't know who's ever stopping in the middle of that. Like you either don't want it or you want it. Is there ever a time where you only want 90% boundary warp? But anyway, it's kind of just morphing the image into that space. All right, so that's one option. The other option is fill edges, where it will try and use some content-aware fill technology to fill in and guess what those pixels should look like. So you get a choice to decide which one you like better. And you could zoom in, you could merge both copies, do it twice and see which one you like better. But whichever one you go with, that will be the final panorama. So I'm going to do a merge or boundary warp, and I'm going to go ahead and merge it together. And when you merge a panorama or an HDR in Lightroom, it actually creates a new image. So it's not doing anything to your original 3, 4, 5, 10 images. It's making a brand new raw file. So it's making a brand new DNG, and it's giving it the name Pano. So you can really tell which one it is. So that is my new image that I can now go into my develop module or my editing in Lightroom, and I can do whatever I want to do. So if I want to continue working on this, continue enhancing it, continue doing everything I want to do that I would normally do, I can. Now, the other thing you should note is that, and I should have shown this in the dialog box, but it applied an auto tone. So it auto aligned the images, and the other one depends on the auto tone. The auto tone is the other choice. So it already applied that auto tone to this. If you don't like auto tone, you can uncheck that box before you merge your HDR together. All right, and I did it with 4 images. You can certainly do it with a ton of images. I was in Switzerland and I took a picture from this top of this castle, and I don't know, I took like what? How many is that? 5, 10, 11 exposures. So I could do the same thing, photo merge, panorama, and it will create a preview from all of those images and stitch them together for me up front for me to look at. And by the way, yeah, and that's what it's going to give me. Now, you have also, I should give you the other options here. You have different projections. So spherical is probably what you're going to use more often, but you certainly have perspective to choose. And again, if you see some weird bending on your images or things that don't look right, try a different projection model. And the auto settings is what I meant here by the auto tone. So if you don't want the auto tone, then uncheck that box. And it takes a few seconds to build each one of these previews after you choose it, especially when you try it on 11 images. So it's going to take a minute to do that. But once it builds that preview, then you can see if you like that one better and then go ahead and merge it together. All right, I'll give it a couple more seconds. I may not wait for this. Come on, build a preview, build a preview. I'm not going to wait much longer. All right, I'm not going to wait. But anyway, on your time, you can try those different projections and see which one you like better. All right, maybe if I did it on a couple here, it'd be faster. Let's do that. Photo merge, panorama. That's perspective, that's cylindrical, and this is spherical. So just whichever one you like better. All right, and then merge it together. Next up, so that's how you would do a panorama, just selecting 2 or more images and merge them together. Is there a limit? I don't know. There might be a upper limit of how many total images you can merge. I've never hit the limit, but I've done it with as many as 11, 12, 15 images together, and it was just fine. Would love to find a way. Would love to find a possible panorama. Would love to find possible panoramas from a massive photo archive. You mean images that you shot that could be panoramas, or that you shot as panoramas, but you forgot where they are? Tell me a little bit more, Mark, about what you mean you would love to find possible panoramas. So, because panoramas means that you shot it specifically with some overlap to be a panorama. It's not just 2 images next to each other, it's 2 images that overlap. As a matter of fact, it will warn you if there's not enough overlap that it can't build a panorama because it needs some overlap to do it. So one of the things to try and answer that question, let me go to stacking. So there is something called auto stack by capture time in Classic. I'm not sure if that's in Lightroom. But what this means is that it will automatically stack images together that were shot relatively close to each other. So in other words, if you're going click, 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 those images were shot relatively close in the same amount of time, then it will use whatever interval you give it to automatically stack images together and build stacks that way. So for example, if I were to go here and do this, it's saying I could have smaller stacks or larger stacks, which is a slider, and the time in between stacks is 3 seconds. So it's already building some stacks together of images, like it put those 11 images together in a stack automatically because it's saying, hey, those were shot within that time frame. I'm gonna go ahead and stack them for you. And that would be a way to identify images that you took, but you don't remember where you took, or that you made them panoramas. All right, single images shot to be panoramas. All right, again, that single images means that if there's no overlap, this feature won't work. So single images, then that would be a cropping thing to crop them as a panorama. All right, so next, let's move on to, we're gonna go down, we're gonna move on to HDR, high dynamic range. So high dynamic range is another form of photography which is actually called bracketing on your camera. It probably isn't, well, this is bracketing, where you're shooting 2 or more exposures that are exposed to 1, 2, 3 stops of difference. So this is a light version, a medium version, and a dark version. That's bracketing. There are cameras that have an HDR feature. There's an HDR feature usually on your phone camera because with HDR that's basically doing something that your human eye does that cameras still don't do normally by default. So for example, this is what I mean. Where you take an image like this and you're trying to capture two drastically different lightings. So the inside of this cave is lit, but the outside is completely blown out. And if you ever shot or photographed someone in front of a window, you've experienced this. And then if you expose for the window or the outside, then the inside's dark. And your naked eye can easily see the difference, and your brain will figure out, what that scene should look like. But cameras traditionally have not done that in one exposure. So typically, this is another example for HDR, creating a high dynamic range image between these two where I get the best of both. I get the inside exposed and I get the outside exposed in one exposure. So that's what HDR is. And as you can see, it could be as little as 2 images. People, commonly do 3 images. And it's just a feature on your camera called bracketing. So if you're looking for, how to do this on your camera, I usually do brackets of 3 with 2 stops of light difference between the brackets. So bright, medium, dark. So that's what I typically do. But you don't need 3. You can certainly do it with 2. All right, so if I select these 2 images, right click and do Photo Merge HDR, that's what it will do. It will automatically align the images, and it will automatically, if I use the auto settings, it will automatically apply those. And then if I hit merge, it will merge those 2 photos or more, 2, 3, 5, 7, how many ever you do, into one new raw file. That is the exposure of both of them put together. So you get what your eye would see. You get the inside lit, you get the outside lit. And this is why most people are doing HDR today. It used to be like an effect, because you can of course go crazy and create a surrealistic image, but that got old really fast. And this is the HDR that people are doing now, where they need it to technically work and need it to do exactly what you want. What if you need a panorama to HDR? Well, funny you should mention that, because we're going to be doing that in a few minutes, a couple of minutes actually. So again, it did the auto settings, but you can certainly go in and do all the other editing you would want to do. You can take it in Photoshop and remove some of the stuff on the ground, do whatever you want, because this is technically a new image that you can do whatever you choose to do with. All right. There was one more I wanted to show you. All right, let's do this one. This is an old one. Obviously in Egypt, and this was shot worst time of day without a tripod, because that's what I was dealt. In other words, it was either go shoot this now or you won't get to shoot it on this trip. So it's not like it was a pleasure trip. This was a business trip, and it was like this was the only time I could get there to shoot this, and I had to deal with it the way I could. I didn't have a tripod. So auto align is imperative, but here's the problem with this image. If you're shooting a landscape and things aren't moving, no big deal. But as much as I yelled from a distance, hey guys on the horses, stop, freeze, I'm trying to take a picture, they didn't really pay attention to me. So what you end up with is half horses. So you end up with the horses moving between the frames. This should only be, I think, 2 horses with 2 riders, as opposed to 2 or 3.5 horses. Or 2.5, 2 and 2 halves, because they were moving between the shots. So what you can do is you can also apply something called deghost. So deghost, again, don't need it if nothing's moving, but if you have a flag moving in the wind, you have water rippling across a pond, then that will create some movement even in your HDR images that you didn't intend. So depending on how much movement there is, you have low, medium, and high. I'm going to go for medium, because they weren't running, they were just walking. And when I click on medium, it will build a new preview, and it will isolate the area in red, if you turn on the overlay, to show you the areas in your image that were moving. So there's something moving up there, something moving here, and that's what it fixed. So it basically says, oh, I'm going to detect things that weren't the same in all 3 frames. I'm going to pick one frame to put those things in, so they're not all moving. There were probably some people down here moving, And then I'm going to let you merge your HDR successfully with those things in place. All right. And it's merging my new HDR image, and there it is. And if we go look at this one now, and we go look at the horses, now we only have the two horses and the two riders as we should with that HDR image. All right, so that is, and again, that image still needs a lot of editing. I can even go do a sky replacement now in Photoshop, but for the sake of time, we may save that till the end. That's what HDR and deghost would do in a situation where it's not perfect because you have moving objects between your multiple frames. And even if you went click, 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 even if something's moving, you're still going to have that distortion or that blur or that half of an image moving between the three shots. All right, next up, and this was something Jan brought up. What if you want the best of both worlds? What if you want a panorama of an HDR scene? In other words, you captured HDRs of the scene you're trying to stitch together as a panorama as well. And I've done just that. And here's the Eiffel Tower. And you can kind of start to see what I'm doing. Here's the middle of it, 3 brackets. Here's the, no, I'm sorry, that's the bottom of it, the 3 brackets here. Here's the middle, 3 brackets. And here's the top, 3 brackets. So technically, and this used to be a pain in the butt. You used to have to merge all the HDRs first, manually. So merge 3, merge 3, merge 3. And then take those 3 results and make a panorama. Now you don't have to anymore. So I'm going to select all 9 shots, and they just repeat again, by the way. So I went from the bottom, 3, 3, 3 up, and then started the top, 3, 3, 3 down. So I would have 2 sets just in case. But anyway, I'm going to take, I only need 1 set. So 3 from the bottom, 3 from the middle, 3 from the top. Right click, and you have one more choice. Photo merge HDR panorama. And remember, that's what it was trying to do with that one scene where it thought it was HDR. And it was like, hey, do you want to do an HDR panorama instead? And it wasn't, but this is. So this is where it will first create the HDR of all 3 and then stitch together the pano all in one. I don't have to do them separately. Lightroom Classic is one of the reasons I love good software. Me too, Jan. So, of course, it takes a little bit longer because it's having to do multiple operations. So taking each one of those raw files, each set of those raw files, merging together the HDRs, and then putting all 3 of those results together and merging the panorama. So it takes a second to build that. And there it is. All right, so now the spherical perspective in this case, or spherical projection is not what I want in this case. I think I want perspective. And that will give me what I want. And then the same thing. Do I want to do a boundary warp, or do I want to fill edges, or do I just want to crop it? And I could crop it, and that'd be kind of cool. That image works for me. But if I want to take advantage of all that space, I could also do that. In this case, I don't really like the way it's making that wider. So I'm going to go with the crop because there's nothing on the sides that I really need. So I'm going to go with the crop in this case. That's why we give you multiple choices. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and merge those together. And now it's going to take all 9 of those shots, do all of that magic that we just told it to do, and it's doing it in the background. So you could move on to your next thing and do it. And by the way, I just want to show you the results. This is a 60-inch canvas hanging in my house, so about 5 foot tall canvas hanging in my entryway, and I love that shot, and that was created from those images we just saw. So I staying true to my word, I not only created that panorama HDR, I actually used it. And here's the new panorama HDR that it created from all that. And of course, I went in and did some editing to make it look the way I wanted it to look before I hung it on the wall. All right, but that's it. That's how it can take all of that together and make one image. Now, last but not least, let's pop over to Photoshop because we're out of time. Oh my God, we're out of time. Let's pop over to Photoshop. Let's do a 360 really quick. So 360 is where you shot with a 360 camera, a camera that can shoot in 360 degrees. So I'm going to pop over really quickly, hopefully before I get cut off. Go to Critical Cloud Files, 360. Oh, hang on. And let's just grab this. Not that one, that one, that one, that one. and bring it in. And Photoshop has this in the 3D menu, the ability to bring in a 360-degree image and let you edit it. So it's bringing it in, and I can pan it around in 360 degrees, and I can edit out anything that I want. But unfortunately, I am out of time to do the editing part, but that would be how you would put it together to do, to take your 360 and then take it into Photoshop and edit it. Then you go up to the 3D menu, spherical panorama, and export it out. All right, I'm out of time. Next up, Jason Levine. Cheers, everybody.